Hello, I'm Matt, the shiny one.
And I'm Robin, the spicy one.
And this is Which is Greater, a show about the important things in life.
Like which board game is better than another one?
Today we're looking at the spectacular Splendor, a game about collecting poker chip gems and trading them in for cards.
We'll also be looking at the new kid on the block, Century Spice Road, a game so new we actually had to buy the German copy. I hope we got the rules right.
But newer doesn't necessarily mean better. Splendor, of course, was nominated for the prestigious Spiel des Jahres award that board game designers have killed for in the past.
Probably.
Yeah. Century Spice Road, on the other hand, didn't even get a mention at this year's awards. So, it's all sewn up really, isn't it? I mean, fantastic. Great. Next episode.
Well, hey, hold on. Just because one German reviewer can't handle his spice does not mean we have to listen to them.
Yeah, but, I mean, yeah, they're the experts, right?
We've had enough of experts. This is about taking back control from the Germans.
Robin, we have control. This is our show.
Strong and stable.
Wait, what?
Greater means greater, and we're gonna make a success of it. You traitor. Ignore Matt. Don't let him put a dampener on things when you could be having hot, fiery fun with Century Spice Road and its gorgeous artwork. I mean, just look at it. It's amazing. It's a game about careful trading of resources, starting with nothing and using the market to get the perfect blend of spice mix so that you can exchange it for tasty, tasty victory points. This card, for example, wants you to hand over 5 brown spice for 20 points. That's a lot of points. That's just because some spices are better than others. I mean, you start the game with turmeric, but that's so useless it's not even worth having. Whereas cinnamon is the most precious of all spices.
Careful with that! Do you know how much it cost?
Naturally, you'll start with just a handful of turmeric, but you can trade that for more valuable ones, going up to the red saffron, the green cardamom, and finally brown cinnamon.
Why is saffron one of the least valuable when this little sleeve cost me like a £5?
Nobody knows.
Fortunately, Splendor makes much more thematic sense. You're a trader in gems. Shiny, beautiful, slightly flat gems. And gems let you open gem mines. Gem mines get you more gems, which is great because then you can hire traders who get you more gems. Which is good because then you can open shops, which get you more gems, but also points. Precious, precious points.
Wait a second. Where do your first gems come from?
I guess they're just kind of lying on the ground.
Yeah, really thematic.
All right, Mr. Spice Cubes.
So what are you actually doing in Century? Well, you start the game with a hand of 2 cards. These are the best traders in your entourage because every spice merchant has an entourage, and a handful of freshly mined turmeric. On your turn, you play one of these cards, and playing these cards gets you more spices. This guy, we'll call him Barry, gets you 2 new turmeric. Cripes, Barry, more turmeric? Fine. This guy, Chris, lets you upgrade 2 of your spices, or upgrade 1 spice 2 times. You can turn 2 turmeric into 2 saffron, or 1 all the way up to cardamom. Good work, Chris. But these guys aren't going to get you very far on their own. So on your turn you can hire a trader from the market, this longer row of cards here, all of which are better than Barry and Chris. Generally they're like this one, letting you swap whatever is above the arrow with what is below the arrow. The colour values make it really easy to understand, and there is no useless card in the game. They always help you get more from what you have. So Dave here swaps 2 saffron for a heap of stuff. What really brings this card system to life though is that as long as you have enough spice in your stash, you can use 1 trade action on a single card multiple times in a turn. So the game challenges you to play efficiently and cleverly, combining cards that play well together to get you lots of spice.
Life is much simpler in the gem trade. On your turn, you either take gems from the supply, or you take a card, paying for it with the gems you've already collected. The cards always have a particular gem printed on them, which means you always have one of these gems available when buying a card. It acts as a permanent discount. Splendor is about building an engine in the simplest, most accessible, most visual way. You can see exactly what your opponent can take next. Like, for example, I can see... I needed that card. If, say, you were about to miss out on something you needed, or just want to get in the way of your opponent, you have the option to reserve a card, taking it from the market and promising to build it later.
You also get a free piece of gold, which you can use as any colour of gem. No! What?
See, there is a problem with Splendor in the way that the cards come out. You can get the perfect card you need just before your turn.
I don't need any of that. It kind of works out across a game, though.
I think it can swing one way in the early stages, whereas Century, in my opinion, is better balanced from the beginning. Wipe! When you buy a card in Century, the position in the row matters. The one on the end is free, just take it, and everything slides down, making the next one free. If you want to take a card further along the row, you can pay in spice cubes by dropping off a cube on each card you pass over. This is a great way of running a market because now these other cards come with bonus spices. I mean, you're potentially giving away spices to the other players, which is a good thing because it encourages everybody to use the market, and it means that if someone happens to pick up the best card in that row, none of the other players lose out. In a similar way, it is better to take the victory point cards from the very end of the row, as these come with a bonus metal coin worth a few extra victory points at the end. But everyone is going to be racing to get these, so it's going to be easier, even safer, to collect spices to trade in for one of the others. You just have to be very careful and keep victory points in mind.
Haha, yes. Century only offers you some Ponzi coins. Splendor offers you something much more tantalizing. Power. The ear of the mightiest nobles in the land, spread across the top of the card area here. One of these will come join you for free the moment you collect the number and colour of the cards that they want. These nobles are targets you are racing for throughout the entire game. It is so tense. You're watching your opponents to see what they're collecting, working out whether you can beat them there. Grabbing one feels amazing. Being beaten to one is excruciating, and collecting them will often mean the difference between victory and defeat. There are few games as relentlessly tense to play as Splendor between well-matched opponents. It is beautiful, it is accessible, and it is as magnificent as a well-cut gem. A golden grater is a prize barely worthy of its splendor. It is a great game.
Splendor may be simpler, but Century is smarter. It's not just a boring race to the top, it's a game of compromises. Like, once you've played a card to the table, it stays there until you spend a turn to take it back into your hand, and that is a waste of a turn, so you don't want to do it too often. Sometimes it's even worth buying a new card from the market instead of picking up an old one, especially if the new one comes with spices. Which victory points cards you take is not as obvious as it looks either. Sure, some have higher numbers printed on them, but they take longer to get the right blend of spices for. And the game ends once any player has a certain number of victory points cards, not a certain number of points. So it can be just as effective to rush the game by taking these easier to collect, cheaper points cards before your opponent has a chance to grab the big points. Timing is important in Century Spice Road, and that's a whole layer of game to think about before we even start collecting hands of cards that make good combos. So although it is fundamentally a game about swapping cubes around, there's loads of flexibility in the way that you achieve that goal. It's fun, it's easy to learn, but there's depth to it, and that is why it's a great game.
So that's two great games, both very accessible, both satisfying puzzles, both with great art. This is going to be a tough one for us to choose between, Robin.
No, because it's Century, obviously.
Why?
Because it's deeper without being harder to learn. Splendor is basically just a race, right? Whereas Century gives you multiple approaches to take.
Yeah, just because it's a race doesn't mean it's simple. You're balancing the pursuit of noble tiles with trying to save up to take the highest value cards. Those top row shops take all game to build up to. Century doesn't have that. It's a constant short-term cycle. Build up to affording a card, buy it, then rebuild.
Which also means it's an actual engine builder, right? Whereas in Splendor, it just gradually reduces the value of the card you want to buy.
Yeah, I get it. I like the combo building in Century. You know, I think it's probably a cleverer game in that sense.
And the card market interaction is fantastic too.
It is. It is. Probably far fairer than in Splendor. Although I've also played a game of Century where I've bought 2 or 3 cards and then only used them for the entire game, using the same sequence of moves after each purchase to get my spice collection back up. I spent probably half the game doing exactly the same things.
Which kind of sucks.
But the thing that really sets the two games apart for me is the tension, right? Splendor might be a race, but it's an incredibly tight one. You can feel it, and that's because you can see what your opponents have and what they can do.
Whereas in Century, you've no idea what someone's going to do with all the cards in their hand, and you don't know what the final victory points tally will be until the very end.
Exactly.
But it's got spice bowls.
What? Spice bowls?
Spice bowls. And they fit really nicely into the insert.
No. Oh, we've really got to stop doing that.
No. Well, there's nothing wrong with the way Century does things.
No, but Splendor does it better.
They are both very simple, rules-wise.
But Splendor takes you on a much more fulfilling emotional journey.
Oh, do you want tissue?
Yes, it's fine.
Okay, I'll leave it there. Century is deeper, but that's because you're building a process rather than something you can see, like in Splendor. So in Century, it is harder to tell what you're doing or why Barry won instead of Chris.
It's lonelier as well.
So,
Just really, no. Okay. See, Century was chasing after Splendor's crown, but it just misses.
So the winner of the Golden Greater is...
Splendor.
Splendor! You know what? I think Matt just can't handle spices.
So that was Splendor versus Century Spice Road.
We think that Splendor deserves the Golden Greater, but do you agree with us? Please let us know in the comments below.
And then please like and subscribe and maybe even share it.
And if you really liked it, then tune in next week when we'll be going undercover with the Resistance versus Secret Hitler.
Oh, you must be the spy.
No, you're the spy.
No, you're the spy.
always the
No,
spy.
come on,
you're
you're
always the
totally
spy.
the spy.
I mean, look at that face.